So I'm going to jump like right in.
Sure.
Can you tell us a little bit about Mercury Boys? Introduce everybody.
Sure. Mercury Boys is my second young adult novel. And basically, it is a few stories wrapped up into one book. It's a story about teenage girls, modern teenage girls, and how they relate to one another. And they're very complicated and sometimes fraught relationships. There is a love story or two in the book. Some of the love stories end better than others. It's a historical novel in that it dives into the mid 1800s, and we learn a lot about daguerreotypes, which are a type of photography used then. And it has a little bit of time travel as well. So it is truly a diverse book.
Well, I call it, in my description, I call it intoxicating because with every page, there's something new. There's a different layer. There's a different relationship. So can you introduce us to our protagonist?
Sure. Yeah.
Our main one.
Yeah. The main girl of the book is Saskia Brown, and she's a 16-year-old. She has just moved with her father from Arizona to a fictional town in Connecticut called Covington. And she's coming from a really rocky situation because her parents are getting divorced. It's a really acrimonious divorce. Her mother was having an affair. It kind of rocked her world. It rocked her relationships with her peers at school. She lost a lot of friends over it. So she's leaving, the town that she knows well. She's leaving friendships. She's leaving her mother, and she's traveling to a town she's never been in before. And I should add that Saskia is biracial. I do include multiracial main characters in all of my young adult books. I myself am half Asian and half white, and I think it's really important to have that kind of representation in books.
Absolutely.
Multiracial authors and characters are pretty underrepresented in literature, especially children's and YA literature. So I make it a point to include this type of character. But in Saskia's case, she's half Black and she's half white, and that's kind of another complicated layer of her because she's coming to a mostly white school, so she sticks out a little bit. And when she arrives at school, she doesn't have any friends, but she quickly falls in with a girl named Lila. And Lila works part-time at a library. And in that library, it's a college library, there is an old photography collection. The photographs are called daguerreotypes, which are a specific type of photography that were used in the 1800s. And they were very hard to make. They were very delicate. To make them, you needed to be very good at chemistry because they used a variety of pretty toxic chemicals like mercury. And the reason the photographs are pertinent to the book is that Saskia soon finds out that by kind of being exposed to liquid mercury, which is part of the process of making a daguerreotype, and touching the daguerreotypes, she is able to see the people in these old pictures, and kind of actually visit them. But she's only able to do that in her dreams. So that's really, the thrust of the book, and what starts the book. But I think the heart and soul of the book is more about when Saskia and Lila start a club with some other girls about their discovery, and then what happens within this club and what happens to the girls and their friendships.
You put so much, because I kind of call the other girls the mean girls.
Yeah.
You do it very, very well. So, did you start the story that way, knowing you were going to have these intense mean girls?
Yeah, I did. So mercury, as we know, it's a toxic substance. When we think about it nowadays, we think about, dangerous fish, or don't touch liquid mercury, that stuff in old thermometers. So you immediately think of toxicity, And there's another form of toxicity in this group of girls, right? Like the girls, some of them are there for, honest friendship and camaraderie, but other girls are there for different reasons, far more dark and nefarious reasons, which I can't give away. So yeah, I definitely always thought from the beginning that there were going to be some mean girls, as you put it. Right, exactly.
So with so many layers and knowing that there were going to be mean girls,
Yeah.
how did you even start? How did you even decide where it was going to start and where it was going to end and where you took everything?
Well, the origin of this book is pretty specific. There was in the news about maybe 7 or 8 years ago, this story about the very first selfie ever taken. And as you guys know, selfie is like a photograph of yourself that people take with their phones. And jokingly, this news story came out that the first selfie was actually a daguerreotype. And the daguerreotype that was shown in the news was of this guy named Robert Cornelius.
Can I show him?
Sure, yeah.
Hold on.
It's a little.
So he's right there.
Yeah. It's a pretty arresting photo. He looks like he's in the middle of a thought, and he looks like there's something to him, right? So
yeah,
I was interested in the photo. I thought that I want to learn more about this Robert Cornelius guy. So I remember learning what I could about him, and honestly, there isn't all that much information, but what we do know is that his dad emigrated to Pennsylvania, and he had a bunch of children, including Robert Cornelius. And early Robert Cornelius was really interested in chemistry, and eventually he worked with his father in metalworking, actually, but on the side he also did chemistry, and eventually he started doing daguerreotypes. He started making daguerreotypes. But the thing about Robert Cornelius is that he had a lot of different hats. He also owned a very profitable lighting store. He also invented things. He had many, many patents. One interesting thing he did was that whale oil was the kind of used all the time in lighting then, and he was a pioneer in using cooking oil instead of whale oil, which really, revolutionized this industry and also just energy. So he was kind of a fascinating guy in general. And when I learned about him, and when I learned about daguerreotypes, and when I learned about how you had to use mercury and other toxic substances in daguerreotypes, it kind of all wove together into my head that I want to do a story with this guy in it, but still keep it, pretty much in the present. And that's how it all started in my head. Another aspect to that is that when I learned more about mercury, the element mercury, I learned it has a really, really fascinating history. It's been associated with alchemy, fertility, healing properties, you name it. It really has been associated with just about anything and everything. And people have ingested it for centuries. Even people we know from history, like Abraham Lincoln and Darwin and Louisa May Alcott, the author of Little Women, all actually used to ingest mercury thinking that it would help them with various ailments, when in fact it was probably causing a lot of harm. So knowing this fascinating history of mercury and knowing about daguerreotypes and Robert Cornelius, somehow it all molded together into this book, Mercury Boys.